Okay, I'm home alone. Sounds terrible, doesn't it? Yeah, it's what time is it? It's like 4 in the morning, and Yulia's off to Kazakhstan to visit with her sister, and Masha and Vanya are at university. So, hey, home alone. I've done it pretty well for 2 weeks, but I'm kind of lonely now. So you guys are gonna have to put up with me now. I'm gonna read one of my Bakersfield stories here. I guess it's a series of posts I made. This first one was kind of inspired by those little Coke bottles. Do you guys remember those? Um, I guess in the '60s they were real popular. Those little 8 ounce bottles. They sold them like in the gas station, Coke machines and stuff. I guess you could get them just about anywhere. I don't think you see them anymore, do you? Anyway, when I first got to Almaty, Kazakhstan, so this is over 20 years ago, maybe 25 years ago. They were selling them in those little bottles, maybe the same little bottles. And it is an international community. You end up meeting people you don't ever think you'll meet. Ambassadors and stuff like that. People that come to town because you're a very small community of, you know, Americans that are living abroad. And so you get invited to things you don't expect to. And I remember meeting one of the Coca-Cola guys, and then I asked him about the bottles. I don't remember what I asked, and he says he was very frank. He says, well, he says is they're not really cost effective in the States. He says, but here, he says the recycling's much easier. Basically, we just got to wash them, fill them up again. So yeah, it wasn't like they had to melt them down, and sterilize them that way. So they washed them out and they filled them up again. We bought them and drank it. Anyway, so little bottles. So they still make the rounds around here, but I think they're mostly imported now here in Baku. They look kind of fancy, got the little red labels on them, and I don't know. I don't know where the old ones go. I suppose they melt them down someplace. They go to a glass recycling or something. Anyway, so that's what inspired this first part. You'll catch it later. Okay, so first of all, I wanted to let you know I like all kinds of weather. Okay, so let me kind of clarify that. I wouldn't really want to get locked outside without shoes in an Arctic blizzard. Okay, that wouldn't be fun for me. Or maybe even take a noon stroll through a buzzardly Death Valley. No, that wouldn't be it either. But even given the right conditions, if you planned ahead, had the right equipment, the right shoes, that could be kind of fun. Both of them could be kind of fun. I wouldn't mind going to the North Pole, South Pole, and kicking around for a few minutes. But when I was a kid in the 1960s, every summer we would take a drive from Sunnymead to Bakersfield to see my cousins. It sounds like a long drive, doesn't it? Well, nothing's really close to Bakersfield. There's no snow-capped mountains, no foamy beaches, no amusing parks. There's just nothing. It kind of makes you wonder why those folks on the Oregon Trail stopped just short of their goal. Didn't they want to go a little further, get to the beach or something? But my mom's brothers, like their father before them, they found jobs working on the railroad and centralized affordable housing in what was known as Thomas Baker's Field. Did you know that was the name? Yeah, Tom Baker, he was a gold rusher. And so I don't know if he was one of the lucky ones, but he did manage to put a fence around a good piece of California desert and capture 108 days of 90-degree weather, 90 plus, okay? It was even hotter than Sunnymead, okay? And Sunnymead got pretty hot in the summertime. Driving there was kind of like pulling a pot roast out of the oven, but without the oven mitts. It was hot. If we stopped for a refreshing snack, by the time we got back in the car, the plastic seats would be sticky in the heat, and the steering wheel untouchable. So we usually waited until sundown before we made the drive, which is really kind of late in the California summer. We'd hit the road about 9 o'clock, and in no time we'd be driving along a deserted highway of black asphalt, still kind of steaming from the noonday sun. But the desert can be beautiful at night. If you've been there, you know what I'm talking about. The sunsets are magnificent, and the conversations in the car were constant. My mom drove. Valerie, my older sister, she rode shotgun, that passenger seat next to her. Velma sat right behind her so she and Val could talk, and I rode behind Mom so my constant questions could keep her from dozing off. Sometimes we'd roll down all the windows, and the hot desert wind would whip through the car, drown out our voices, sear our lungs. It was just a hot, hot, dry wind. I would take the water jug. You remember those big milk jugs? Big plasticky things? And I'd pour it out recklessly on my head, neck, and chest, and let the wind kind of spin me cool and dry, until finally Velma would yell, "Hey, Mom, Jimmy's wasting the water." "I'm thirsty." "He's pouring it all over himself." "Jimmy, quit wasting the water. What if we break down?" "Are we going to break down?" "We will if you waste water." "Does the car need the water?" "Well, you never know." "You never know what?" "Go to sleep, Jimmy. Just sit back and go to sleep." And I would lay my head on the car door and let the breeze blow my eyes shut and doze with the rhythm and the rumble of the road, trying to keep just one eye open, looking for that ever-elusive Dairy Queen. Oh, do you remember Dairy Queens? They still got them, don't they? They serve all kinds of food now, but just that, all I ever wanted was that vanilla cone dipped in chocolate. Okay, last time I was there, that's what I got. That's all I wanted. So maybe that's all I want in life, just that vanilla cone dipped in chocolate. Anyway, Dairy Queens didn't pop up too often in the 60s. And I don't think Mom was really committed to stopping. She made peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for the trip, and she didn't want us to fill us full of sodas and sweets. But eventually, we'd have to stop for gas. Mom didn't really like the Valiant to drop below half a tank. Do you remember the Valiant? They don't make those anymore, do they? Had the little slant six engine. It was built like it's built like those little toy cars, just square kind of looking. Anyway, I don't think it got much more than 15 miles to gallon. No cars did, right? It was between 8 and 15. That was about it. And without a tune-up, it got even less. Okay, so we go hunting for a Shell or a Chevron, trying to find one a penny cheaper than the last place we drove by, which was sometimes a bit tough because prices seemed to climb about the halfway mark because you'd be far from home and civilization. They knew that, okay? In the 1960s, service stations far outnumbered fast food outlets. I think it's the other way around now. So whenever you needed a restroom, you'd start looking for the next gaggle of gas stations. And you always had to pump a few gallons just to get the key. They weren't going to give it to you. To get the key to what has to be the dirtiest restroom you have ever seen or smelled. It's like they were in competition who could scare away the most people. But Mom wasn't much for stopping alongside the road, and we had to deal with the used-to-be-white stalls more than once a trip. In the old days, service stations sold you a tank of gas, a quart of oil, and not much else. No one had thought of an idea of putting a mini mall on the side of the building. Okay, I think Arco was the first one that did that. Atlantic Ridgefield Company. You guys knew that, right? Arco. Okay, anyway. But most gas stations had a Coke machine. They would hang on to those little 8-ounce bottles with a vice-like grip. It's like a metal machine just holding on to it like a big claw, waiting for a quarter to unlock the gears. And they were so cold. Now, part of the memory probably spawns from the contrast of the desert heat. But it must not take much to get that little icebox cranked up to something just short of freezing. And a glass bottle always seems colder than the dull plastic that leaches out that icy flavor. Who make plastic bottles? Who invented these things? Right? There's just glass bottles. Oof, yeah. Okay, it was always a tragedy. My favorite was the coffee and cream colored chocolate sodas. You could never seem to find those in the stores. It was always in the gas stations. But even often, those were like the most popular. And if they were out, and they usually were, then a regular everyday cola would just have to fill the gap. Okay, I don't think we had the Diet Colas back then. Maybe the Tab, I don't remember. So it was always a tragedy when the machine was out of order. I didn't want my quarter back. I wanted my chocolate soda. And then we'd be back on the road. It's only 172 miles from Sunnymead to Bakersfield. even at a reasonable speed of 60 miles an hour, it should have been a 3-hour trip, max. I think my uncles even tried to make it in 2. I'm not sure how fast they were driving. But for us, and my ever so careful mom and her "I gotta go now" son, it always took us over 4 hours. Over. Who knows? Maybe it was meant to be that way. 4 people soaking up the sunsets, hair when I had it, flying in the simmering summer wind, and sipping on those chocolate sodas. Oh, maybe it's like they said, it's the journey, not the destination. Well, I'm not sure my cousins would agree, but it could be true. Did Bing, Bob, and Dorothy ever wander the road to Bakersfield? The Road to Bakersfield. I don't think anybody made that movie. If they did, I'm not sure anybody would go see it. But the 1960s was a great time to be a kid. For a while, back there in the 60s, my mom's brothers lived on the same street in Bakersfield. Every summer, Mom would get a week off of work and we would spend the whole time with our cousins, bouncing between the 2 houses. It was always too hot to play outside during the day. We would try, we would go out and run around, but after a few minutes, we'd retreat indoors. Wet, dehydrated, and just a little punchy. Do you have any ice cream? Not for breakfast. How about hot cola with ice? Somewhere about 9 o'clock, all the kids would venture back out, 9 p.m. And then the world belonged to us. My cousins lived on this little cul-de-sac of manicured lawns. It was that thick green Bermuda grass, that dark green, shady palms with clean, wide sidewalks. The gutters constantly flow with the rivers of sprinkler runoff. I don't think anybody was conserving water back then. And those tiny little eyes looking for a drink in the desert. There were snails, crickets, stink bugs, worms, and the grand prize, those miniature frogs that could spring away quickly, unexpectedly. As the night darkened, we'd gather in the pools of streetlight and explore our little river jungle. And there were games. The cars had retreated to their homes or driveways, or moved so slowly and deliberately you could easily outrun them. The flat, steamy blacktop became our playground. There was red light, green light, kick the can, Simon Says, tag, and the highlight of every shadowy night, hide and seek. In red light, green light, everyone had their own strategy. I tried to run as fast as I could and reach the end before they could turn around and call my name. I usually fell just short. They knew I was coming. My sister Velma would take small, insignificant steps, inching her way forward, never seeming to move, simply growing imperceptibly closer with each color change. She would patiently defeat the best of players. Hide and seek becomes a whole new game in the dark. Away from the streetlights, the world was a dark shadow. People were invisible and could never be found. Games went on forever until the weary hunters would finally call out, come out, wherever you are." A light breeze would kick up about midnight, causing a summer sunburn to shiver. But the sidewalks still hid the fire from the sun, buried deep in the concrete. You could stretch out on them like a warm bed and let the heat toast your bones. And where were the parents? Did the world come to an end, leaving only the little ones to rule? It certainly seemed that way. It was a great time to be a kid. Yeah, where were those parents? They never ventured out in the night. They would cluster around the dining room tables and talking, seemingly all at once. Did anyone ever listen? And then suddenly, they'd all erupt in laughter. We'd rush in and beg them to tell us, what's so funny? Oh, nothing at all. Tell us, please. And they would tell us. And they were right. It wasn't funny at all. Parents were a different species. They ate strange foods, they sipped forbidden drinks, and smoked. Everyone smoked in the 60s. They'd plow through packs of king-size Cools and short, stumpy Camels, sipping Coors through those little triangular holes they popped in the sturdy cans. They still make those little can openers? Mom and her brothers had lots of stories to tell. They grew up in the 30s, drifted apart in the 40s. Older brother Fred went in the Navy and caught the end of the war in the Pacific. James followed, as he always did, but things were quieter in 48 and 49. There was a brief bubble between wars, but I don't think he ever ended up in Korea. Fred's wife, Margie, had been Mom's best friend at Beaumont High School. Their yearbooks are filled with photos of them, always together, side by side. They were simply inseparable until Fred separated them. It must be odd losing your best friend to your brother. Her younger brother, James, married the easygoing Lou. Was it short for Louisa? She was younger than the rest, petite, pretty, friendly. She looked us kids in the eyes and smiled and spoke to us as if we were little adults, which we were. Time was already speeding up, and we would soon be drifting away as well. The parents would lose track of time, too. As the night became full and the streets became quiet, the neighbors never really complained. We'd run through their yards, hide in their bushes, and laugh and yell. And every once in a while, a long and piercing scream would break the night, and front doors would open, and light summer dresses and sleeveless T-shirts would stand on the porches, gripping the doorknobs, a little tight with worry. And all the kids would stop, and one of the older ones would yell out, "It's okay. Nobody hurt." And the doors would slowly shut, sometimes with a few more anxious words exchanged. "You kids be careful. Stay out of the street and the flowers. Isn't it time to come in? Not yet. In a little while." And they would slip away and let the summer linger just a little longer. They knew what we didn't, that it would all be over, oh, so soon.